They ripped my grandson Leo from the experimental treatment program this morning, and by sunset, he was gone, his small body still in my arms. The hospital administrator cited administrative priorities in a cold email. But I knew the truth. The last spot went to the son of Harold Winslow, the billionaire funding the trial. To get answers, to force someone to look me in the eye and explain how a child's life became a ledger entry. The hollow ache in my chest, the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I dialed the program director again and again. Winslow's pressure was absolute. His lawyers had already sent a cease and desist to any staff member who spoke to me, cloaking his cruelty in legal jargon. I drove to the research facility, my old sedan rattling past manicured lawns, and marched straight to the reception desk, demanding to see Dr. Evans. The security guard stepped forward, his expression bored. But then a woman in a lab coat rushed out, pulling me aside. She whispered that she had evidence, patient records showing Leo was deliberately bumped. But as she slipped a USB drive into my coat pocket, two men in suits emerged from the elevator, their eyes locked on us. She paled, muttering, "They monitor everything," before hurrying away. Now the drive feels like a lead weight, and those men are walking toward me. The USB drive burned a hole in my pocket as I sped away from the facility, the suit's car tailing me through the downtown traffic. To get home, access the files, and expose the truth before Winslow's people could erase it. The fear gnawing at me, the image of Leo's still face haunting every mirror. Winslow's pressure was tangible. His resources meant every digital step I took could be traced, every ally silenced. I swerved into a library parking lot, using their public computers to avoid my home network. The pattern interrupt came when the library's internet failed mid-download, a localized outage the librarian blamed on scheduled maintenance with a nervous shrug. I ducked into a restroom, heart pounding, and plugged the drive into my phone with an adapter. The files opened, revealing emails between Winslow and Dr. Evans, discussing Leo's removal as a necessary adjustment. But as I scrolled, a new email popped into the thread. "The grandmother has the data. Contain her." My phone screen flickered, then went black. A soft knock sounded on the stall door. I shoved the dead phone into my purse and slipped out the library's back exit, the knock echoing in my ears. To find a safe place to reboot and copy the data, turning Winslow's evidence against him. The isolation. I couldn't risk calling my daughter, not with her grief so raw. Winslow's pressure tightened as a black sedan idled across the street, its driver watching the library doors. I cut through an alley, the damp concrete chilling my ankles, and ducked into a thrift store. Buying a cheap burner phone with cash, I felt a sliver of control. The pattern interrupt hit when the store's TV news flashed a segment on Winslow's charity gala, painting him as a hero. Rage simmered as I set up the phone in a coffee shop corner, but the files wouldn't transfer. The USB was corrupted, except for one audio file. I pressed play, hearing Winslow's voice. "Make the grandmother disappear if she becomes a problem." The barista called my name for the order I hadn't placed, and the man at the next table stood up, his hand in his jacket. I abandoned the coffee and the burner phone, fleeing into the subway's crowded tunnels. To reach my friend Martha's house, where I could hide and piece together a plan using the audio clip. The deepening paranoia, every stranger's glance feeling like a threat. Winslow's pressure was everywhere. His influence stretched into public transit, with security cameras tracking my movements. I boarded a train, clutching the USB like a talisman, but the pattern interrupt came when the train halted between stations, lights flickering. An announcement blamed a signal issue, but I saw a suited man moving through the cars, checking faces. I squeezed into a packed car, my breath shallow, and used the chaos to copy the audio to a cloud account from a teenager's borrowed tablet. The micro twist emerged when I noticed the audio file's metadata. It was recorded in Winslow's home office with a timestamp from the day Leo died. As the train lurched forward, the suited man spotted me, and the doors sealed shut with him inside. The train doors hissed open at the next stop, and I shoved my way out, losing the suit in the rush-hour crowd. To get to Martha's, play her the audio, and convince her to help me leak it to the press. The guilt of dragging another elderly woman into this. Martha had her own health struggles. Winslow's pressure was a noose tightening. News alerts on public screens warned of false claims against him, discrediting me before I could act. I reached Martha's quiet street, but her porch light was off, unusual for her. Her door was ajar, the living room ransacked, pillows slashed and drawers emptied. No note, no Martha. My hands trembled as I checked her landline. The voicemail had one message from a blocked number. Stop now, or she loses her nursing home spot. Then my burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a photo of Martha, scared but unharmed, in a sterile room. The message read, "Trade the data for her." I stood in Martha's wrecked home, the photo searing into my mind. To secure Martha's safety without surrendering the only leverage I had, the audio proof of Winslow's threat, the crushing weight of responsibility. If I failed, Martha would suffer for my quest. Winslow's pressure was brutal and personal. He'd targeted my closest friend to break me. I grabbed Martha's emergency cash from a hidden tin and fled to a motel, paying in cash to avoid traces. The pattern interrupt came when the motel TV switched to a local channel airing a Winslow interview. He smiled, touting his commitment to families, while my photo flashed as a misguided griefer. Enraged, I connected to the motel's Wi-Fi to email the audio to a reporter, but the file was blocked. Winslow's tech had flagged it. Then an email popped into my inbox from Martha's helper, demanding I drop the USB in a park trash can by midnight or accidents happen. The attachment was a live feed of Martha tied to a chair. The live feed of Martha, her eyes wide with fear, glued me to the motel's scratchy bedsheet. To stage a countermove, fake the USB handoff to draw out Winslow's men and rescue Martha. The sleepless night, my body aching with exhaustion and dread. Winslow's pressure was a clock ticking down. His resources meant he could track any electronic move, so I had to go analog. I bought a duplicate USB from a tech store, loading it with fake files, and drove to the designated park. The trash can was surrounded by police tape, a crime scene from an unrelated robbery, cops milling about. I hesitated, then saw a woman in a jogging suit signal me from a bench. It was the lab coat woman from the facility, her face strained. She mouthed, "They're watching," and tossed a key into the bushes before jogging away. I retrieved it, a locker key for the bus station. As I turned, a cop approached, asking if I'd seen suspicious activity. Over his shoulder, the black sedan rolled into view. I lied to the cop, claiming I was just walking my dog, a fiction that bought me seconds, and hurried to my car, the locker key clutched in my palm. To reach the bus station, see what the lab coat woman left, and use it to save Martha. The moral erosion. I was deceiving authorities now, crossing lines I never imagined. Winslow's pressure was a shadow. His men were likely monitoring the station, so I took back roads, my old car groaning. The pattern interrupt hit when I found the locker. It held a handwritten note and a burner phone. The note read, "Winslow's son is fake, adopted for sympathy. Proof inside." The phone had one contact: reporter. But as I dialed, the station's intercom announced a lockdown due to a suspicious package. People panicked, rushing exits, and in the chaos, a hand grabbed my arm. It was the lab coat woman, bleeding from her lip. "They know I helped you," she gasped, shoving a file into my hands before vanishing into the crowd. The file contained adoption papers for Winslow's son, dated after Leo's death. I crouched behind a vending machine, the adoption papers crumpled in my grip. To leak this new proof immediately, exposing Winslow's fraud and forcing him to back off. The raw terror. The lab coat woman's injury showed how far he'd go. Winslow's pressure was a net closing. The station lockdown felt staged to trap me. I used the burner phone to text the reporter, attaching photos of the papers, but the message failed. No signal. The lights cut out, plunging the station into darkness, screams erupting around me. I felt my way to an emergency exit, the papers tucked inside my coat, and burst into an alley. There, a delivery driver offered me a ride, his face kind, but when I showed him the address, he smirked. "Mr. Winslow sends his regards," he said, locking the doors. I slammed against the window, but the car sped toward the highway. Then my original burner phone, forgotten in my purse, buzzed with a text from Martha's number. "I'm free. They let me go." But the photo attached was her, standing outside my house. Martha was at my house, the one place I'd avoided to keep her safe. To get there, confirm she was unharmed, and uncover why Winslow released her. The confusion. Nothing made sense, and my trust in any outcome was shattered. Winslow's pressure had shifted. Instead of threats, he'd given a twisted gift, leaving me off balance. I kicked at the car's door until the lock gave way, tumbling onto the roadside as the driver cursed and sped off. Limping to a gas station, I called a cab, giving a fake address nearby my home. The cab driver was an old man who recognized me from the news, his eyes pitying as he said, "That Winslow fellow is hosting a charity ball tonight. Everyone's talking about it." He dropped me a block away, and I crept toward my house, seeing Martha on the porch, waving nervously. But as I approached, she mouthed, "Don't come closer," and pointed to the bushes. A device blinked there. A camera. Then my phone rang. Winslow's voice was calm. "Come to the ball tonight, or the next accident will be real." Winslow's threat to attend his charity ball or face real accidents left me frozen on my own street, the camera in the bushes blinking like a malevolent eye. I had until tonight to walk into his den, but I wouldn't go unarmed. I needed to turn his event into a trap for him. My sanity. Every shadow felt like a sniper's nest, and Martha's safety hung on my choices. Winslow's pressure was omnipresent. His men had likely bugged my house, so I retreated to a public park to think. The pattern interrupt came when an elderly man feeding pigeons slipped me a note. It was from the lab coat woman, warning that Winslow planned to publicly discredit me at the ball as unstable. Rage fortified me. I used the burner phone to call the reporter again, this time leaving a voicemail with the adoption proof and the ball's location. But as I hung up, the phone died permanently, its SIM card fried. A black SUV pulled into the park entrance, and a man stepped out, holding up a familiar silver USB, the one I'd lost. He smiled, then crushed it under his heel. The crushed USB was a message. Winslow knew all my moves. To get to the ball without being intercepted, using the chaos of high society to my advantage. The physical toll. My knees ached from running, and I hadn't eaten in days. Winslow's pressure was a fortress. His security would scan every guest, so I needed a disguise. I visited a consignment shop, buying a sleek black dress and faux jewelry, then dyed my hair grey-silver to blend with the wealthy attendees. The pattern interrupt occurred when the shop's TV showed a news update. Winslow was donating millions to pediatric research, his speech timed for the ball. Sickened, I practiced walking in heels behind the shop, but a woman approached, handing me a forged invitation. "For Leo," she whispered, vanishing before I could thank her. The micro twist. The invitation had a backstage pass tucked inside. As I hailed a cab, the driver eyed my reflection and said, "You're that grandmother, aren't you? He's got kids watching for you." Then he locked the doors and drove toward the ballroom. The cab was a trap, but the driver's grip on the wheel was loose. I shoved the door open at a red light and rolled into the street, my dress tearing on asphalt. To reach the ballroom undetected and use the backstage pass to access restricted areas. The humiliation of scrambling on the ground, my age weighing me down. Winslow's pressure was a web. His spies were everywhere, even among cab drivers. I limped to a nearby hotel, bribing a valet with my last cash to let me use a staff entrance. The hotel was hosting a pre-ball cocktail party, and I blended into the crowd, grabbing a waiter's tray. But then I saw Dr. Evans, the program director, laughing with Winslow's associates. I edged closer, overhearing him say, "The grandmother's evidence is garbage. We've scrubbed it all." My hands shook, but I slipped the backstage pass into my clutch. The micro twist. Evans glanced my way, his eyes widening in recognition before he turned away quickly. As I moved toward the ballroom, a hand clamped my shoulder. It was security, and they were escorting me inside. Security didn't arrest me. They ushered me into the glittering ballroom as if I were a guest, my heart pounding against my ribs. To find Winslow and confront him with the adoption papers I'd memorized, forcing a public scene. The dizziness from adrenaline, the way the chandelier's glare hurt my eyes. Winslow's pressure was a performance. He stood on stage, microphone in hand, surrounded by bodyguards. I weaved through the crowd, the backstage pass burning in my hand. But the pattern interrupt came when a woman spilled champagne on me, whispering, "They're routing all audio through a private server. Your recording won't work." I ducked into a hallway, finding a service room with a computer terminal. Typing frantically, I accessed the event's system, but the files were encrypted. The micro twist. A folder labeled Leo appeared, containing medical records showing he'd been eligible until the day Winslow's son was added. As I copied it, the door opened, and Winslow himself stood there, smiling. "I've been expecting you," he said, holding up my stolen burner phone. Winslow's calm demeanor was more terrifying than any threat. He led me to a private lounge, his bodyguards blocking the exit. To stall him, extract a confession, and signal the reporter I'd contacted. The crushing sense of isolation in the opulent room, surrounded by his wealth. Winslow's pressure was psychological. He offered me a seat, pouring whiskey as he said, "Let's end this quietly. I'll fund a foundation in Leo's name." I refused, sliding the adoption papers across the table. His smile faded, but the pattern interrupt came when the lounge's lights flickered. The lab coat woman had triggered a power surge from the server room. In the dimness, I grabbed a letter opener from the desk, but Winslow laughed. "You think I'd adopt a sick child? He's my nephew. I needed a poster boy." The micro twist. He admitted Leo was removed to avoid bad optics if his nephew died. As I lunged, security burst in, and Winslow nodded to them. "She's armed," he said, and they tackled me to the floor. My head hit the edge of the table, and everything went black. I woke in a sterile medical room, my wrists bound to a gurney, an IV in my arm. to break free and expose Winslow's confession before he erased it. The throbbing in my skull, the chemical taste in my mouth from sedation. Winslow's pressure was absolute. He'd institutionalized me under a 72-hour hold for instability, discrediting my story. I tugged at the restraints, spotting a nurse's chart. It listed me as a suicide risk. The nurse entered, but it was Martha in disguise, her hands shaking as she untied me. I hacked the security feed. Winslow's announcing his charity expansion tonight, she whispered, handing me a keycard. We crept into the hall, but an alarm blared. Winslow's men had spotted us on camera. The micro-twist. Martha revealed she'd been working with the lab coat woman to gather financial records proving Winslow embezzled research funds. As we ran, a door slammed shut ahead, and Winslow's voice echoed over the intercom. "You're too late. The press is already here." Winslow's announcement was happening now, and I was trapped in the hospital's basement with Martha. To reach the press conference and disrupt it with the embezzlement proof. The raw fear on Martha's face, the way my body screamed with every step. Winslow's pressure was a lockdown. All exits were sealed, and security patrolled the halls. I used the keycard to access a maintenance elevator, but it opened into a packed lobby. The press was here, in this building. The journalist I'd emailed earlier recognized me and shoved a microphone my way, live streaming. I shouted about the embezzlement, but Winslow's bodyguards charged toward us. The micro-twist. The lab coat woman appeared on the stream from a remote location, holding up documents that matched mine. Chaos erupted as reporters swarmed, but Winslow stepped onto a stage, calm. "These are forgeries from a grieving woman," he declared, and screens showed edited footage of me confessing to lies. Then the live stream cut out, and security grabbed Martha, dragging her away as I stood helpless. Martha's capture left me stranded in the chaotic lobby, reporters now eyeing me with suspicion. To rescue Martha and prove the documents weren't forgeries by accessing Winslow's private server. The despair of losing another friend to this fight. Winslow's pressure was a smear campaign. News outlets were already running stories painting me as delusional. I ducked into a stairwell, using the keycard to reach the server room Martha had mentioned. The room was empty, but a terminal was on, displaying a live feed of Winslow's office. He was destroying paper files. I plugged in a USB drive I'd taken from the medical room, downloading data, but a warning flashed. Remote wipe initiated. The micro-twist. The files included emails between Winslow and a judge, discussing Leo's case being handled. As I yanked the drive, the door burst open, and Winslow stood there, holding a gun. "You've cost me millions," he said, aiming it at me. But then the fire alarm screamed, and sprinklers drenched us both. The sprinklers blurred my vision, but I lunged for the gun, knocking it from Winslow's hand as we slid on the wet floor. To subdue him and escape with the USB drive before security arrived. The searing pain in my shoulder from the fall, the water soaking through my clothes. Winslow's pressure was frantic. He scrambled for the gun, shouting for his guards. I grabbed a fire extinguisher, slamming it into his knee. He crumpled with a cry. The lab coat woman rushed in, grabbing the USB and sprinting out, but Winslow's guards were right behind her. I followed, slipping in the hallway, and saw her cornered by armed men. The micro-twist. She tossed the USB back to me, then let herself be captured, mouthing, "Go," as they cuffed her. I fled down the stairs, the drive secure, but as I reached the exit, a news van blocked my path. The reporter from earlier stepped out, but she wasn't alone. Winslow's lawyer was with her, holding a subpoena. The subpoena was for defamation and theft. The lawyer's smile smug as the reporter filmed everything. to avoid arrest and get the USB to a safe outlet, leveraging the public attention. The exhaustion threatening to collapse me, the legal noose tightening. Winslow's pressure was now judicial. He'd use the courts to bury me. I pretended to comply, handing over a decoy USB from my pocket, but kept the real one hidden. The crowd of protesters gathered outside, parents from the treatment program, holding signs that read, "Justice for Leo." They surrounded me, shielding me from the lawyer, and a woman shoved a phone into my hand. "Live," she said. I started streaming, holding up the USB, but the micro twist emerged when Winslow's face appeared on the phone screen. He was hijacking the feed, his voice calm. "This ends now. Meet me at the research facility in 1 hour, or Martha gets charged with hacking." The stream cut off, and the crowd fell silent, all eyes on me. I had no choice but to go, but as I turned, a child in the crowd handed me a note. "He's lying. Martha's free." But the note was in Winslow's handwriting. The note in Winslow's handwriting felt like ice in my hand. The words, "He's lying. Martha's free," scrawled in sharp, familiar ink. Was this a trick to make me drop my guard, or a genuine warning from within his ranks? I had less than an hour to meet him at the research facility, but now uncertainty clawed at me. To verify Martha's safety and decide whether to walk into his trap or find another way to use the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. Immense. If I was wrong, I could lose everything, including my freedom. Winslow's pressure was everywhere. His men were likely watching from the edges of the protest crowd, and the legal subpoena hung over me like a guillotine. I shoved the note into my coat and pushed through the chanting parents, their signs for Leo a painful reminder of why I couldn't stop. Spotting a payphone down a grimy alley, I hurried to it, my heart thudding. I fumbled for coins and dialed Martha's number, the rotary dial clicking slowly. It rang 5 times before going to voicemail, her cheerful greeting now a ghost. I left a hurried message. "Martha, it's me. Call back if you're safe." As I hung up, a pattern interrupt occurred. A plain white van screeched to a halt at the alley's mouth, and Martha stumbled out, her clothes rumpled, eyes wide with fear. "They let me go," she said, her voice trembling as she embraced me. But her hug was stiff, and when she pulled back, I saw a tiny black device clipped inside her collar, a wire. The micro twist hit me. She wasn't free. She was a pawn, forced to betray me. Before I could speak, she whispered, "He has my grandson too. I'm sorry." And Winslow's smooth voice emanated from the van's speaker. "Time's up. Get in, or she loses him forever." The van doors slid open, revealing 2 men with guns, their faces blank. I stood frozen, the USB drive feeling heavier than ever. I stepped into the van, the doors slamming shut behind me, plunging us into dim light. To protect Martha and her grandson, while keeping the USB hidden, waiting for a chance to strike back. The nausea churning in my stomach, the betrayal in Martha's eyes as she avoided my gaze. Winslow's pressure was immediate. The van accelerated, and one of the men patted me down, but I'd tucked the USB into my shoe just in time. We drove in silence, the city blurring outside, until the van swerved violently, tires screeching, and crashed into something solid. Shouts erupted outside, and the back doors were pried open, not by Winslow's men, but by protesters from the crowd, armed with crowbars. "We followed you!" one yelled, pulling us out. In the chaos, Martha grabbed my arm, her whisper frantic. "He's taking us to a private lab, not the facility. He plans to discredit you with fake medical tests." The micro twist. She slipped a key into my hand, a key to a storage locker containing Winslow's financial records. As we stumbled onto the street, the van's driver emerged, unharmed, and raised a phone. "He knows," he said, and a sniper's laser dot appeared on my chest. The laser dot burned a red point over my heart, freezing me in place. To survive this ambush and reach the storage locker with Martha's key before Winslow could erase more evidence. The deafening pulse in my ears, the way my legs threatened to buckle. Winslow's pressure was lethal. His sniper was a reminder that he'd kill me if I didn't comply. The protesters scattered, screaming, and I ducked behind a parked car, pulling Martha down with me. The pattern interrupt came when a delivery truck rammed the sniper's car, dislodging him. It was the lab coat woman's doing. She waved from the truck before speeding off. I seized the moment, dragging Martha into a nearby subway station, but she resisted. "I have to go back. He'll hurt my grandson," she sobbed, handing me a slip of paper with the locker address. The micro twist. The paper had a blood stain on it, and Martha's hands were bruised. She'd been tortured for information. As I took it, she turned and ran toward the street, and Winslow's men converged on her. I descended into the subway, the key clutched tight, but the turnstiles were locked, and a voice over the intercom said, "The station is closed due to a security threat." The lights cut out, and footsteps echoed behind me. Darkness enveloped the subway platform, the footsteps growing closer. To find an exit and get to the storage locker, using the key to expose Winslow's embezzlement. The chill seeping into my bones. The guilt over Martha's capture. Winslow's pressure was a hunt. His men were fanning out with flashlights, their beams slicing through the black. I felt along the wall, finding a maintenance door, and slipped through into a tunnel smelling of damp and oil. The A train rumbled past on another track, its lights revealing a map on the wall. The locker was near a station 2 stops away. I started walking the tracks, my shoes scraping on gravel, but then a hand grabbed my ankle from a drainage grate. It was a homeless man I'd seen at the protest. He shoved a phone into my hand. "For Leo," he muttered, disappearing back into the shadows. The phone had one text. "Winslow's moving the money tonight. Locker 42B. The micro twist. The text was from an unknown number, but the profile pic was Leo's photo, stolen from my home. As I stared, the phone buzzed with a new message. "I have your house keys too. Come out, or I burn it down." Winslow's voice followed from a speaker somewhere in the tunnel. Winslow's threat to burn my house down sent a primal fear through me. Every memory of Leo within those walls flashed before my eyes. To save my home and the evidence inside, while still reaching the locker to secure the financial records. The splitting headache from stress, the way my hands shook as I gripped the key. Winslow's pressure was personal now. He was attacking my sanctuary, knowing it held Leo's last belongings. I climbed out of the tunnel through a service ladder, emerging into an alley behind my street. Smoke billowed in the distance, not from my house, but from a neighbor's trash fire, a cruel coincidence. The A-kid on a bike skidded to a halt, handing me a note. "From Martha's grandson," he said before riding off. The note read, "He's at the storage place now. Don't go." But it was signed with a drawing of a lion, Leo's favorite animal. The micro twist. I realized Winslow was using Leo's memory to manipulate me, but the drawing was too accurate, too personal. As I neared my house, I saw the front door ajar, and Winslow's lawyer stepped out, holding a box of my photos. "We're cleaning out the clutter," he sneered, tossing a picture of Leo into the street. It shattered, and I lunged for it, but a car pulled up, and Winslow himself got out, aiming a gun at my head. The gun barrel stared me down. Winslow's smile cold, as he gestured to the broken photo of Leo. To retrieve that photo and any other evidence in my house without getting shot, buying time for the locker plan. The raw grief tearing through me, the violation of my home. Winslow's pressure was absolute. His lawyer began loading my belongings into the car, including Leo's medical files. I raised my hands slowly, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. The USB is fake, the real one's elsewhere. I bluffed, hoping to distract him. The A News helicopter buzzed overhead, and reporters swarmed the street. The protester from earlier had tipped them off. Winslow lowered the gun slightly, his composure cracking as cameras focused on him. In the chaos, I snatched the photo pieces from the ground, but the micro-twist, tucked behind the broken glass, was a tiny SD card I'd hidden months ago, with backups of Leo's treatment records. As I pocketed it, Winslow noticed and barked an order to his men. They advanced, but the crowd surged forward, and a reporter shoved a microphone in my face. "Is it true Winslow faked his son's illness?" she asked, and Winslow's expression turned murderous. He raised the gun again, but this time it was aimed at the reporter. Winslow's gun shifted toward the reporter, and the crowd gasped, freezing in place. To de-escalate the situation and escape with the SD card, using the media to force Winslow's hand. The terror in the reporter's eyes, the weight of putting others in danger. Winslow's pressure was public now. His reputation was crumbling, and he grew reckless. "She's lying!" he shouted, but the cameras kept rolling. I stepped forward, holding up the SD card. "This proves Leo was removed illegally," I declared, my voice carrying over the murmurs. The police sirens wailed, and officers pushed through the crowd, but they didn't arrest Winslow. Instead, they formed a perimeter around him. One cop whispered to me, "He owns the chief. Get out now." I turned to run, but the micro-twist. The SD card was a decoy. The real one was still in my shoe, and I'd palmed it during the confusion. As I ducked between houses, Winslow's lawyer tackled me, and we tumbled into a backyard. He ripped the decoy from my hand, but I kicked free, scrambling over a fence. On the other side, I found myself in the storage facility parking lot. Locker 42B was just ahead, but Winslow's men were already there, cutting the lock. I crouched behind a dumpster, watching Winslow's men break into locker 42B, to retrieve the financial records before they did, or find a way to expose them remotely. The exhaustion weighing me down, the scrapes from the fence stinging my skin. Winslow's pressure was efficient. His men worked quickly, loading boxes into a truck. I used the key Martha gave me. It was for a different locker, 43A, nearby. Slipping over, I unlocked it and found stacks of documents detailing Winslow's embezzlement from the research fund. The A car alarm blared, drawing the men's attention, and the lab coat woman emerged from the driver's seat, waving at me. "Upload it now!" she yelled, tossing me a smartphone. I started photographing the documents, but the micro-twist. One folder contained adoption papers for Winslow's son, but with a different name. A child who had died years ago, used as a prop. As I captured the last page, Winslow's men spotted me and charged. I fled into the facility's office, but the door locked behind me and the phone had no signal. Through the window, I saw Winslow arrive, holding Martha at gunpoint. "Come out, or she dies in front of you," he called, his voice calm. Winslow held Martha, her face pale, the gun pressed to her temple. To surrender the evidence in exchange for her life, but I needed a way to ensure it still got out. The crushing helplessness, the tears I couldn't shed. Winslow's pressure was final. He knew I wouldn't let Martha die. I stepped out of the office, hands raised, the smartphone hidden in my waistband. Let her go, and I'll give you everything, I said, my voice rough. He nodded, and his men took the documents from locker 43A, but I kept the phone. The lab coat woman's car revved and crashed into Winslow's truck, creating a diversion. In the chaos, Martha broke free and shoved Winslow. And I threw the phone to a reporter who'd followed us. But the micro twist. The phone wasn't the only copy. I'd already emailed the documents to the reporter's backup address during the standoff. As Winslow regained his footing, he aimed at me. But Martha jumped in front, taking the bullet. She collapsed, and Winslow smiled. "Now you have nothing," he said. But the reporter shouted, "It's live! The world is watching!" The police finally moved in, surrounding Winslow, but he laughed. "I own them," he sneered, and they handcuffed me instead. The police clamped cuffs on my wrists, dragging me away as Martha bled on the asphalt. To prove my innocence and ensure Winslow faced justice, using the live stream as leverage, Martha's life hanging in the balance, the sirens drowning my protests. Winslow's pressure was institutional. He stood smugly, giving orders to the officers. I shouted about the embezzlement evidence, but they ignored me, pushing me into a squad car. The lab coat woman intercepted the car, showing the officers her ID. She was an undercover federal agent investigating Winslow for fraud. "Release her," she demanded, and the cops hesitated, confused. In that moment, I spotted Winslow slipping into his car, trying to flee. The micro twist, the live stream had gone viral, and crowds were gathering outside the storage facility, chanting for justice. As the agent argued with the police, I kicked the car door open and ran toward Winslow's vehicle. He sped off, but I grabbed onto the trunk, holding on as he swerved through traffic. The car hit a pothole, and I lost my grip, tumbling onto the road. As I lay there, bruised and breathless, Winslow's car screeched to a halt, and he got out, holding a gasoline can. "This ends now," he said, splashing fuel toward me. Winslow's lighter flickered an inch from the gasoline, soaking my clothes, the acrid smell burning my nostrils. I had seconds before I became a human torch, my mind screaming for a way out. To knock the lighter from his hand and roll away from the fuel, using the chaos to escape. The searing pain in my ribs from the fall, the terror freezing my limbs. Winslow's pressure was absolute. His smile was cold, and his men formed a circle, blocking any retreat. I kicked out, my shoe connecting with his wrist, and the lighter flew into the air. But the pattern interrupt came when a news van rammed through the barricade, reporters spilling out, and the lab coat woman leaped from the passenger seat, shouting, "Federal agent, stand down!" In the confusion, I rolled through the gasoline, but the micro twist. The fuel was diluted. Winslow had used water mixed with a small amount of gas, a psychological trick. As I scrambled to my feet, Winslow drew a second gun from his coat, aiming not at me, but at the agent. "You're all witnesses to her assault," he declared, and the police moved to cuff me again. But then a child's voice from the crowd yelled, "Liar!" and Winslow's aim wavered. The child's shout echoed, drawing everyone's attention to a young boy holding a tablet. It was streaming live, showing the adoption papers I'd exposed. To use this distraction to disarm Winslow and get the agent to safety. The dizziness from the gasoline fumes, the way my heart hammered against my bruised ribs. Winslow's pressure intensified. His men started herding the crowd back, but the live stream had gone viral, and people were recording on phones. I ducked behind the news van, where the agent shoved a folder into my hands. "His offshore accounts. He's moving money now," she whispered, before engaging Winslow's guards. The pattern interrupt occurred when the police commander arrived, But instead of siding with Winslow, he arrested one of Winslow's men for corruption. The micro twist. The commander was the lab coat woman's contact, and he had a warrant for Winslow's arrest. But as he read it, Winslow laughed, pulling out a pardon document signed by a powerful ally. "I'm untouchable," he sneered, and the commander hesitated. Then the van's engine revved, and the driver, Martha's grandson, yelled, "Get in!" But Winslow fired at the tires, and we were stranded. The van's tires blew out, listing sideways as Winslow's shot echoed. To escape with the offshore account folder and reach a secure location to transmit the data. The throbbing in my head, the gasoline-soaked clothes clinging to my skin. Winslow's pressure was legal now. His pardon made him immune, and he ordered the police to seize the folder. I clutched it tight, darting between vehicles, but the agent was pinned down by gunfire. The pattern interrupt came when a garbage truck plowed through the scene, its compactor roaring. The homeless man from the subway was driving, and he created a barrier between us and Winslow. I scrambled into the truck's cab, the folder safe, but the micro twist. Inside, I found Martha, bandaged and pale, holding a USB drive. "I stole this from Winslow's car. It has everything," she said, her voice weak. As we sped away, Winslow's men pursued on motorcycles, and the truck's door was ripped open by a grappling hook. Winslow himself swung inside, knife in hand, and Martha shoved me out the other side into a passing bus. I landed hard on the bus's floor, the folder and USB still in my grip, as Martha and Winslow struggled in the garbage truck speeding away. To get to a computer and upload the data before Winslow could retrieve it. The guilt over leaving Martha, the bus's lurching motion making me nauseous. Winslow's pressure was relentless. His motorcycles tailed the bus, and he'd likely track any digital footprint. I hid in the back seat, using a passenger's phone to hotspot, but the signal was jammed. The bus driver announced a detour due to a broken water main, and we turned into a tunnel, losing the motorcycles. In the darkness, I plugged the USB into the phone, and files loaded. Winslow's secret meetings, bank transfers, even Leo's medical records altered. The micro twist. One file was a video of Winslow admitting Leo's removal was to test a drug on his son for profit. As I prepared to send it, the bus emerged into light, and Winslow stood blocking the exit with a police barricade. "She's hijacking this bus!" he shouted, and officers aimed rifles at me. Rifles trained on me, Winslow's lie hanging in the air. To prove my innocence and broadcast the video live using the bus's camera system. The crushing weight of false accusation, the passengers' fearful stares. Winslow's pressure was manipulative. He had the police convinced I was dangerous, and they advanced slowly. I held up the phone, shouting, "I have proof," and tapped the bus's emergency intercom, patching the audio through. The pattern interrupt occurred when a passenger, a tech expert, grabbed the phone and hacked into the bus's Wi-Fi, streaming the video to social media. Winslow's face paled as his confession played, but the micro twist, the video had a timestamp showing it was recorded after Leo's death, meaning Winslow knew he'd killed him. Enraged, Winslow charged the bus, but the police hesitated, their loyalty shifting. As they cuffed him, he spat, "This isn't over. I have allies everywhere." Then, the bus's fuel line burst and smoke filled the cabin. We evacuated, but Winslow's lawyer emerged from a car, holding a court order to seize all evidence as stolen property. The court order waved in the lawyer's hand, demanding I surrender the USB and folder, to hide the evidence and ensure it couldn't be destroyed, while protecting those who helped me. The smoke inhalation making me cough, the legal loopholes tightening. Winslow's pressure was now through the system. His lawyer had judges in his pocket. I slipped the USB into my sleeve, but the agent approached, showing her badge to the lawyer. "This is federal evidence now," she declared. But he produced a counter-warrant. The Martha's grandson rode up on his bike, tossing a flash drive to me. "The backup," he yelled, before speeding off. I pocketed it, but the micro-twist. The flash drive was a tracker, and Winslow's men zeroed in on my location. As the lawyer argued with the agent, I ducked into a nearby library, but the doors locked behind me automatically. Winslow's voice came over the intercom. "You're trapped, and I'm having your house demolished right now." A live feed showed bulldozers approaching my home, and Leo's room was first in line. The bulldozers advanced on my house, Leo's window in their path, to stop the demolition and save his memories, while securing the evidence. The visceral pain of losing his last sanctuary, the dust from the bus crash coating my throat. Winslow's pressure was vengeful. He'd ordered the demolition remotely, and his lawyer watched from a car outside the library. I raced to a computer terminal, uploading the video to multiple news outlets. But the library's internet cut out. Winslow's tech team had hacked it. The homeless man from earlier appeared, jamming the door open with a book, and handed me a phone. "Call this number. It's the governor's hotline," he said, before disappearing. I dialed, explaining the situation and the micro-twist. The governor was Winslow's uncle, but he'd been unaware of the crimes. He ordered a halt to the demolition, but as the bulldozers stopped, Winslow burst into the library, gun drawn. "You ruin everything," he snarled and fired. But the agent tackled him, and the bullet shattered a monitor. As they struggled, I grabbed the flash drive and ran, but the library's sprinklers activated, dousing the electronics and erasing the terminal's data. Water soaked the library, ruins of computers around me, the flash drive safe in my hand. To get to a broadcast station and air the evidence before Winslow recovered. The chill from the water, the despair of lost data, but the flash drive held the original. Winslow's pressure was physical. He and the agent fought nearby, and his men were searching the stacks. I slipped out a fire exit into an alley where Martha waited in a car, engine running. "I stole this from his garage," she said, her arm bandaged. We drove toward the local TV station, but the car's GPS was tracked, and Winslow's lawyer followed in a sedan, ramming us. We swerved into a parking garage, and Martha handed me a keycard. "For the station's back door. I used to work there," she explained. The micro-twist. The keycard was expired, and security guards approached. As I tried the door, Winslow's lawyer emerged from the stairwell, holding a syringe. "Sedation for your own good," he said, and Martha stepped in front of me, taking the injection instead. She collapsed, and I fled up the stairs, but the door to the roof was locked, and Winslow's voice echoed from below. I was trapped on the stairwell landing, Martha unconscious below, Winslow's footsteps climbing fast. To find another way out or draw help, using the flash drive as a bargaining chip. The fatigue weighing me down, the guilt over Martha's sacrifice. Winslow's pressure was personal. He'd hurt everyone close to me, and now he was seconds away. I kicked at a vent cover. It gave way, and I crawled into the ductwork, the flash drive clutched tight. The agent's voice crackled from a radio I'd picked up. She was coordinating with police to raid Winslow's assets. I whispered my location, but the micro-twist. Winslow had a jammer, and the signal died. As I crawled, I emerged into a studio control room where a technician was prepping the evening news. I shoved the flash drive into a console, and the video started playing on monitors. But Winslow burst in, gun aimed, and the technician froze. "Edit that out," Winslow ordered, but I hit the broadcast button. The video went live, but Winslow shot the console and the feed glitched. As screens fizzled, the police stormed in, and Winslow grabbed me as a hostage, backing toward the window. Winslow held me in front of him, gun to my head, as police surrounded us in the control room. To negotiate my release and ensure he faced justice using the live but glitched broadcast. The cold metal of the gun against my temple, the dizzying height from the window behind us. Winslow's pressure was desperate. He knew his empire was crumbling, but he threatened to jump and take me with him. I stayed calm, whispering, "Leo's watching," and his grip loosened slightly. The agent signaled a sniper on a nearby roof, but Winslow saw the laser dot and shifted, putting me in the line of fire. In that moment, I elbowed his ribs, and we stumbled against the window. The micro-twist. The window was old and gave way, but I grabbed a cable, dangling high above the street. Winslow fell, but he caught my ankle, pulling me down. As I clung, the cable snapped, and we plummeted, but a safety net deployed from the fire department below. We landed hard, and Winslow was cuffed, but as paramedics checked me, his lawyer approached with a smirk. "He'll be out on bail by morning," he said, and handed me a subpoena for endangerment. The subpoena for endangerment felt like a final insult, the paper crumpling in my grip as Winslow's lawyer smirked and walked away. Winslow was out on bail within hours, his wealth bending the system, and I was the one facing charges. To clear my name and ensure Winslow couldn't silence the truth, using the remaining evidence to sway public opinion before the trial. The deep exhaustion seeping into my bones, the phantom ache of Leo's weight in my arms. Winslow's pressure was legal warfare. His team filed motions to dismiss the video evidence as coerced, and he gave interviews painting me as unstable. I retreated to a safe house the agent provided, a cramped apartment with barred windows, and reviewed the flash drive contents again. The pattern interrupt came when a knock sounded. Not Winslow's men, but a group of parents from the treatment program holding signs and food. "We're here to support you," one said, but as they left, a note slipped from a basket. "He's planning to flee the country tonight." The micro-twist. The note was from Winslow's estranged wife, who'd secretly recorded him admitting to Leo's removal. As I called the agent, the safe house's alarm blared, and smoke poured under the door. Winslow had found me, and the exits were blocked. Smoke filled the safe house, my lungs burning as I crawled toward the bathroom, the only room with a window. To survive the fire and escape with the flash drive and the wife's recording, getting them to authorities before Winslow fled. The searing heat on my skin, the panic tightening my chest. Winslow's pressure was arson. He'd set the fire to destroy me and the evidence, his men watching from the street. I smashed the window with a toilet tank lid, glass shards cutting my hands, and climbed onto a narrow ledge. The pattern interrupt occurred when the homeless man from earlier appeared on a nearby roof, tossing a rope ladder. "Hurry! Cops are coming!" he yelled. But as I swung across, Winslow's sniper fired and the ladder snapped. I fell onto a dumpster below, the impact jarring my spine. But the micro-twist. The fall dislodged a hidden compartment in my coat. The SD card with Leo's records was still intact. As I limped away, Winslow's car screeched around the corner, and he leaned out, holding a phone with a live feed of Martha in a hospital bed, a ventilator tube in her mouth. "Surrender now, or I pull the plug," he said, and I froze in the middle of the street. Winslow's threat to Martha's life paralyzed me, the phone screen showing her fragile form in the hospital bed. To save Martha without giving up the evidence, creating a diversion to draw Winslow away from her. the guilt and rage warring inside me, the cold pavement beneath my knees. Winslow's pressure was emotional blackmail. He knew I'd choose Martha over revenge, and his car idled, waiting for my decision. I stood slowly, raising my hands, and shouted, "The evidence is in a safety deposit box. I'll take you there." Winslow smirked, ordering me into the car, but the pattern interrupt came when the agent's voice crackled from a nearby police cruiser. She'd triangulated Winslow's location and was moving in. As Winslow turned, I dove behind a parked truck, but the micro-twist. The safety deposit key was real, and it held backups of all the data, including the wife's recording. Winslow's men surrounded me, but then a news helicopter spotlighted us, and the reporter from earlier broadcast live. Winslow caught threatening a grandmother. Enraged, Winslow fired at the helicopter, and the police returned fire. In the chaos, I sprinted toward the bank, but Winslow tackled me, and we rolled into an alley, his hands around my throat. Winslow's grip tightened on my throat, his eyes wild as he choked me against the alley wall. To break free and reach the bank, using the chaos to my advantage. The black spots dancing in my vision, the struggle for each breath. Winslow's pressure was physical dominance. He outweighed me, and his men blocked the alley's ends. I kneed him in the groin, and he loosened his hold, gasping, but then he pulled a knife. The pattern interrupt occurred when the lab coat woman rappelled from a roof, landing between us, her gun drawn. "It's over, Winslow," she said, but he laughed, revealing a bomb vest under his coat. "I'm not going alone," he snarled, and the police backed off. I edged toward the bank entrance, but the micro-twist, the bomb was fake, a prop to buy time, and Winslow's real plan was to access the safety deposit box himself and destroy the evidence. As he lunged for me, I shoved him into a dumpster, and the agent cuffed him, but his lawyer arrived with a judge's order to release him due to police brutality. Winslow walked free, smirking, and whispered, "I'll see you at the bank." Winslow's whisper echoed as he strode away, the judge's order shielding him once more. To get to the bank first and secure the evidence, then leak it to the press before he could intercept it. The frustration of the legal system failing, the ache in my throat from his choking. Winslow's pressure was his influence. He had the bank manager in his pocket, and I saw his car speeding toward the financial district. I hailed a cab, but the driver was Winslow's man, and he locked the doors, driving toward a warehouse instead. The pattern interrupt came when Martha's grandson, on his bike, chased the cab and slashed the tires with a knife, forcing it to stop. I kicked the door open and ran, but the micro-twist. The safety deposit box required 2 keys, mine and the bank manager's, and Winslow already had the manager's key. As I reached the bank, Winslow was inside, smiling as the manager handed him a box. I burst in, but security grabbed me, and Winslow opened the box, only to find it empty. He turned to me, eyes blazing, and said, "You switched it." Then the agent entered with a warrant, but Winslow held up a USB, the real evidence, and crushed it under his heel. The crushed USB lay in pieces, Winslow's triumph written on his face as the agent arrested the bank manager for corruption. To recover from this loss and find another copy of the evidence, relying on the network of allies I'd built. The sinking feeling of defeat, the physical toll of the chase. Winslow's pressure was his ruthlessness. He'd destroyed the primary evidence, and his legal team was filing suits against me for harassment. I was escorted out by police for disturbing the peace. But the homeless man met me outside, pressing a new flash drive into my hand. From his wife. She hid duplicates, he muttered before vanishing. The pattern interrupt occurred when a citywide alert sounded. A bomb threat at Winslow's corporate tower, a false flag he'd set to divert resources. As chaos erupted, I ducked into a cafe to check the flash drive. But the micro twist. It contained not just the evidence, but a video of Winslow admitting he ordered Leo's removal to test a drug for profit, with timestamps proving premeditation. As I uploaded it to a cloud server, Winslow's men stormed the cafe, and he followed, holding a remote. "I'll blow this place if you don't hand it over," he said, and patrons screamed, scrambling for exits. Winslow held the remote, his finger hovering over a button as the cafe emptied, leaving me trapped. To disarm him and protect the innocent people nearby, while ensuring the video went viral. The terror of causing more deaths, the weight of responsibility. Winslow's pressure was his willingness to kill. He'd rigged the building with explosives, and his men sealed the doors. I slowly raised the flash drive, offering it, but as he reached for it, I threw a coffee pot at his head, and he stumbled, dropping the remote. The pattern interrupt came when the agent and SWAT team breached the skylight, rappelling down. But Winslow detonated a small charge, blocking their entry. Smoke billowed, and I crawled under tables, the flash drive still in my grip. The micro twist. The remote was a decoy. The real bomb was in Winslow's car outside, set to detonate if he didn't check in. As I neared the exit, Winslow tackled me, and we fought for the drive. But then his phone buzzed, an alert that the video had been leaked online. Enraged, he punched me, and I fell against a counter, my vision blurring. He stood over me, pulling a knife, but the cafe's TV switched to a news report showing the video, and Winslow's face filled the screen, his confession playing for the world. The video of Winslow's confession played on every screen, his voice echoing through the cafe as he froze, knife in hand. To capitalize on this exposure and ensure he was arrested before he could flee or cause more harm. The pain from his punch, the dizziness from the smoke. Winslow's pressure was his desperation. He knew his empire was collapsing, and he lunged at me. But the SWAT team broke through the door, tackling him to the ground. They cuffed him, and the agent secured the flash drive. But Winslow laughed. "I have judges on my side. I'll be out by dinner." The pattern interrupt occurred when the governor himself appeared on the news, revoking Winslow's pardon and ordering a full investigation. Cheers erupted outside, but the micro twist. Winslow had a dead man's switch, a trigger that would release incriminating data on his allies, causing chaos. As he was led away, he whispered to me, "When it drops, they'll blame you." Then, my phone buzzed with a message. "Data leak initiated. You have 1 hour to stop it." The agent looked at me, her expression grim, and said, "He's not lying. We need to find the server." The data leak threat loomed, Winslow's final move to destroy his enemies and frame me. To locate and disable the server before the leak caused irreversible damage, using the last of my strength. The overwhelming fatigue, the sense that the fight might never end. Winslow's pressure was from behind bars. He'd set this in motion, and his lawyer was already spinning it as my doing. The agent drove me to Winslow's estate, where the server was hidden, but it was guarded by his loyal staff. We scaled the fence, avoiding sensors, and found the basement server room. The pattern interrupt came when Martha, recovered and determined, met us there with a tech expert, her grandson, who hacked the system. But the micro twist, the leak was a bluff. Winslow had no more data, but he'd planted a virus that would erase all evidence if we interfered. As we debated, the server beeped. The countdown was real, and it had minutes left. I made a choice. Pull the plug, saving the data but risking corruption. The screens went black, and for a moment, silence. Then, the agent's phone rang. The governor confirming Winslow's assets were frozen and he'd face life in prison. But as we cheered, I noticed a photo on the desk. Leo, smiling, and I realized I'd forgotten his face in the rage. I stood in Winslow's silent server room, the photo of Leo in my hand, his smile thawing the ice in my heart. The agent confirmed Winslow would never see freedom again, his legacy in ruins, and the treatment program was reinstated with safeguards. I visited Leo's grave the next day, the grass fresh under my knees, and placed a small stone from our garden. Martha joined me, her arm linked in mine, and we watched the sunset paint the sky in quiet hues. I didn't feel triumph, just a weary peace, knowing I'd honored Leo's memory without losing myself to vengeance. The news moved on, but I kept his room intact, now a place of solace, not pain. Some mornings, I sit there with a cup of tea, tracing his photos, and for the first time, I can remember his laugh without the sting of tears. The fight is over, but the love remains, a gentle weight I carry into whatever days are left.